203 years ago, your founders brought forth in Ogden a new church conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all people are created equal. Hear, hear. And among other things. Yes, this morning we celebrate and honor the 23rd anniversary of the founding of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ogden. On January 19th, which I know is next week, but next week is MLK Sunday, so you know, it's this week we're doing this. On January 19th, 1992, 140 people gathered to witness the birth of a new Unitarian congregation here at its Charter Sunday. 56 people joyfully stepped up to sign the membership book and commit themselves to supporting this new spiritual venture, covenanting to walk together. Some of those charter members are still with us today, and I would like to ask them to stand to recognize their long-standing dedication to this church. So, would the charter members please rise in body or, full body or hand? Yes. Yeah, Evelyn, come on. Yes. And we are grateful for the courage, goodwill, and generosity of the founding members that built the strong, loving foundation for this church that we cherish today. But, you can ask yourself, well, what does it really mean to become a member of a Unitarian Universalist church? Some faiths, the recitation of a creed, a particular belief, is required for membership. That's the ticket to being in the club. For example, to become a Muslim, one recites the Shahada, the core belief of Islam, with true conviction and understanding. One would proclaim La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, meaning there is no God, small g, but God, big G, Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger or prophet. Same thing with conversion to many forms of Christianity. It often involves the reciting of the Nicene or Apostles' Creed, or the declaration of the belief that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior. But what about us? What about Unitarian Universalists? We're not a creedal faith. We do not have a statement of faith that one must sign on to become a member. We consciously make a very wide space for a variety of theological beliefs among us. Sitting in this sanctuary at this very moment, we have dedicated Christians, Buddhists, pagans, atheists, agnostics, humanists, and all manner of folks who have their own notion of God and of the ultimate meaning of life. That is part of the faith of a free church, to embrace this wide freedom that each person has the capacity to think for themselves about the big, big questions of existence, and also to choose a path that speaks to their own mind and their own heart. Now, this path speaks of highly personal, private, solitary exploration that continues to unfold over the course of one's life. It is the life of a seeker, always seeking more nuanced understandings of the truth. Now, some folks get a little confused and think, well, we have those 7 principles. Aren't those a creed? But let's just check out something about them. Again, pull out that hardback hymnal and turn in the first few pages to the principles. It's in the front. You just have to go a few pages in. I'll give you a moment to find it. Okay. It's all on one page. And I want you to note the language at the top. Our 7 principles are part of a covenant, and it's a covenant made by whole congregations and the collective of all Unitarian Universalist congregations together. So it is not a profession required for membership. It is a covenant. And so you might say to yourself, okay, what does she mean by covenant? What do we as Unitarian Universalists mean by covenant? In its simplest terms, a covenant is a promise about human behavior. It's a promise rooted in love, respect, and mutual interest in the common good. We're all familiar with these kinds of covenants. When Dan and Darren or Greta and Rob get married, they say wedding vows. Those are a covenant. When we dedicate a newborn child in our faith, and we all say we are part of the community of concern and love who will help raise this child. Again, that is a covenant. It's a promise rooted in love, respect, and mutual interest in the common good. Now, our faith's particular notion of covenant goes back to colonial days here in America, when the soon-to-be first governor of Massachusetts, John Winthrop, spoke to his fellow Puritans aboard the Arabella as they approached the shores of New England under stormy seas. And this is what he said to his fellow soggy Puritans, is that now the only way to avoid shipwreck and to provide for our posterity is to follow the counsel of Micah, to do justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly with our God. We must be willing to abridge ourselves of our superfluities for the supply of others' necessities. We must uphold a familiar commerce together in all meekness, gentleness, patience, and liberality. We must delight in each other, make others' conditions our own, rejoice together, mourn together, labor and suffer together, having always before us our eyes, our commission, and community in the work, our community as members of the same body. So shall we keep the unity of spirit in the bond of peace. Wow, you came up with all that in the middle of a storm at sea. I'm impressed. But as Unitarian Universalist theologian Victoria Safford observed, it was an extraordinary declaration of interdependence. Despite their stone-cold reputation, their caricatured intolerance, these people who promised to bear each other's burdens as their own, to subvert their separate private interests, their superfluities for the public good of all. These were our Puritans. Humbly, gently, patiently, they would serve a larger vision than any one eye could see. They would hold together a larger hope. Our present-day Unitarian Universalists are direct descendants from that Puritan covenantal tradition. If you were to travel, our church here is only 23 years old. If you were to travel this morning to Massachusetts, you would be worshiping in a Unitarian Universalist church that has been there since the 1600s. So yes, we are direct descendants from these Puritans. Our theology may be very different than theirs, but the form of our being together comes from the sacred bond of covenant to walk together, come what may. For our church is established by the voluntary commitment of its members, not an external authority like a bishop or a king or a pope. So what kind of promises, since a covenant is a promise, what kind of promises do we make as Unitarian Universalists? So just consider the language of the covenants from both Unitarian and Universalist faiths that we read just a few minutes ago. They express a sacred promise about how the community will act in holy relationship with each other and with that which is greater than all of us. They both speak of love as the foundation, with active service as the embodiment of this love. They both speak of dwelling in peace, seeking the truth together, and being there for each other in our times of need. And that's why these very words are in our hymnals, and they're spoken in many Unitarian Universalist congregations every Sunday as part of their worship, either in their original forms or in some slightly modified forms that individual congregations have created to suit their needs. These covenants sum up what binds us together in community. These sacred promises remind us that we are inherently relational and living in community, which we all know is not a perfect experience. Yeah. Retired Unitarian Universalist minister Alice Blair Wesley explains it this way. The center of a free church, the heart of the whole thing, is a promise of fidelity, a covenant, which each member freely makes upon joining. Actually, also, each member begins again with, or renews, or renegotiates his or her promise many times over the course of the life of the church, in the privacy of renewed conscience or spiritual growth. Too often, our promise, our covenant, is implicit, not consciously explicit. But that really doesn't matter, whether it's verbalized. What matters is it faithfully meant? So, for us to live into our covenant faithfully, we must live in grand generosity. Absolutely grand generosity. Generosity of spirit, generosity of love, generosity of forgiveness, generosity of creativity, generosity of energy, generosity of sharing our worldly goods, generosity of our total being toward the co-creation of a beloved community, our own way of striving to create heaven on earth. Now, I've seen this kind of grand generosity at work in intimate relationships, in marriages and partnerships, in families, in well-functioning workplaces, and in congregations that I serve. And when we are living in this sacred state of being, ours is no caravan of despair, though we've broken our vows 1,000 times. Because, for heaven's sake, we're human. We have good intentions to do something, and then we forget to do it. We intend to acknowledge that we hurt someone else's feelings, but we shy away from admitting our mistake and from saying, I'm sorry. Sometimes we don't step up and do our part when we're asked to serve or contribute, even though we have plenty of time to do it. We momentarily forget that it's not about me, but it's about us. We act out, and we don't take responsibility for our actions. Now, has anyone here ever done any of those things? Yeah, and if you're not raising your hand, I know you're raising your hand in your heart. Yeah. So, if the road to hell is paved with good intentions, then the road to heaven is paved with our covenant to hold ourselves and each other accountable in great love, over and over and over again. It is the power of covenant to bring us back into community, into those warm mittens again. Yes, I have seen this power at work in Unitarian Universalist congregations. I see it when someone admits they made a mistake, takes full responsibility, and apologizes. I see it when others gracefully accept those apologies and move on in love. I see it when a member steps up joyfully to serve in a new way. I see it when a member takes a risk to speak their truth and share their perspectives in meetings in a mindful, loving kind of way. I see it when members warmly greet newcomers and seek to get to know them, honoring their unique and precious humanity. I see it when folks do what needs doing, from rinsing coffee cups to writing grant proposals to cleaning bathrooms to taking minutes at a meeting, even when that wasn't what you wanted to be doing that day. I see it when someone lovingly shares the creative talents and delights us all in the process. Yeah. I see it when a member reaches out to someone who is hurting and offers their quiet comfort. I see it in how we stand on the side of love, whether it's together supporting lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer youth, like we did for so many years with our outreach program, or marching in solidarity with the New Zion Baptist Church to acknowledge that Black lives matter. I see it in generous checks written for the year-end appeal. I see it in our commitment to solar energy as we do our part to live more lightly on the earth in sacred covenant with creation. I see it in children dancing down the aisle in the Christmas pageant and elders sharing their wisdom with others. I see it all over the place every day, though you've broken your vows 1,000 times. Yeah. And so, we're all seekers, living under this big tent of covenant together. We promise to walk together in love. We promise to do our best. It's the best we can all do. We promise to do our best. And when we fall short, we are held in community and brought back into the fold. And in this covenantal state, we look beyond those immediately around us to the grander covenant of life with a capital L, and know that we are held accountable in our families, in our places of work, towns and cities, states and nations, and indeed the whole of creation. For we have declared our interdependence, and once we begin to understand that we are part of this grand whole, we live in a constant state of sacred bond, to be fully present to our loved ones, to help those most vulnerable and suffering in the world, to channel our Puritan ancestors and walk humbly with our God, loving each other and being instruments of peace and justice. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. May it be so now and always, in all our relations. Blessed be.